This time on Holy Ghost Notes. I'm still messing up. Why is that?
It feels weird. I don't like it.
You go crazier than any other drummer I've ever seen live.
Dun, 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 ba-da. What's going on? This is Matt and Tim, and you're listening to the Holy Ghost Notes podcast. Thanks for joining us.
What's up, guys?
What's up, everybody? Thanks for following along. Tim and I were just talking. This is episode 53. 53. And in our pre-roll with our inner circle, I was talking about how I just thought if someone was listening to us in the very beginning, like episode 1, 2, 3 through 10, and then they're like, this is kind of old. It's kind of the same thing. They're right sometimes and wrong other times. Or you found another podcast, whatever happened, and you left. I think it's pretty neat to think about how 2 years later and at episode 53, we're still running. And I just hypothesized this scenario in which this person comes back and they're like, refreshing the podcast page.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, Holy Ghost Notes still exists. Like, it must not suck that badly. They're still here.
Either that or we just like to talk.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say, or they're just oblivious to the fact that, like, no one likes them. But we're still here, and we still like doing this. And we like to think that what we're doing here, no, actually, seriously, what we're doing here, we really feel like is important. And it's important for a couple reasons. One thing that I think is unique about our podcast and is important to talk about is the mental and psychological aspect behind drumming.
Yeah.
And so Tim made the point in our pre-roll, like, Tim, you were like, yeah, there are podcasts out there where they talk about gear and they talk about what to buy, what not to buy, how to play, how not to play. And we get into a little bit of that, but those are probably our least favorite episodes.
Yeah. It's the mental ones that we like the best.
Yeah.
Breaking down why you do something and how to better it.
Right, yeah. Right. And you made the point that I liked, which was how to improve your drumming and how to improve your life.
Yeah.
And so how to improve your drumming would be the drum topic, and how to improve your life would obviously be what we believe is like a full and fulfilled life is one where you are talking to God and living for something beyond what's here, in the here and now, whether it's just the fact that you're loving other people in a way that like is not natural, or you have a private spiritual life or religious life that's important to you and guides you. We've talked about that a lot in this episode or in this podcast. Like if your house is intact, you can go out into the world and whatever happens out there can't touch you, can't burn you, can't affect you, because at home, everything is intact. On the contrary, if life at home is a mess, internally speaking, then you can go out there and get a bonus and, have a great day, have a great week, have a great year, and it really doesn't give you what you thought it would.
That's right.
And so we've talked about that a lot, and I appreciate that about our podcasts, that we go to a level that might make some people feel uncomfortable. I mean, at times it makes us feel uncomfortable, but it's like, okay, so what? Like, let's get uncomfortable. Let's talk about things that might be tough to talk about because we feel like they're important.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's I've said it before. It's important because it's we've had feedback from people just saying how it's helped them better themselves and better their life, work through struggles. But honestly, it's helped me do the exact same thing. Like these conversations are the conversations that I need in my life. And so this isn't all lip service. This isn't just us having a conversation to get some listens. Like this is us having a real conversation, and we just happen to be recording it. That's right. Literally what it is at its at its simplest form, at its core. So yeah. But with that being said, you've got a lot going on, man.
A lot going on right now.
You're busy. Yeah. We were talking about me being busy, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm not as busy as you are.
Let me clear my throat before I get into this. It feels like a lot. We have a very exciting week, which, as it turns out, will have already happened by the time this episode comes out. So this is episode 53. It comes out on May 25th. And by that time, we will have played the Leveler 10-year anniversary live stream show. So if you saw it, if you got tickets, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, then I think at that point there will still be merch available on the site, and you can at least go there and support us. And if you're anything like me, Tim, I don't know if you like this or not. Are you nostalgic?
Oh yeah, so nostalgic.
Me too. So like when Between the Bird and Me came out with a bunch of merch from Alaska, like they did this Alaska themed release.
Yeah,
I think it was Alaska. It just like tugged at my heartstrings, just seeing the logo and just like I have that CD. There's just something about that era of my life, and I think the same is true of Leveler for some people because it goes back to 2011, and there's so much about that time frame in my band's career. So the merch is selling well. It's very popular, and I think some of it is like people are coming out of this COVID era of like I can't wait to get out there and I want some fresh clothing.
Yeah.
and then some of it is like, wow, I forgot how much I like that record, or that record means a lot to me, and this is really cool. So anyway, I just wanted to just say thank you for your support. If you did get tickets for the live stream, we've been preparing for this for months and months, a lot of work, and it all leads up to this weekend. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Leveler, and this might come across weird because it's like your band, but Leveler actually holds a little bit of a place in my heart because we started hanging out a lot more often when you were writing that album. And
yeah, we were right over there when you came over.
Yeah, yep. And you talked, you were like calling me pretty frequently because we were working on the Brick by Brick stuff. Yeah. And actually the conversations that we have on this podcast are they kind of resemble the conversations that we were having quite often when you were in the studio actually recording Leveler down in Florida. And I remember multiple conversations from that time, and then obviously I remember you writing it, and so it actually, like, that whole era, Leveler plays a part in my mind as far as that time in my life, and
that's awesome.
Kind of building our friendship.
Did you write? Did you help me write the beginning of Internal Canon as well?
I did.
You remember that?
Yeah. Because I was messing with this off time, the bat,
under oath style.
and yeah, like this weird thing, and then we kind of.
I have it written into the beginning there, so it's like A, B. A is pound, B is blast, and then it goes back to pound. And then the second time through that bar, it's like okay, so there were two people that helped me with the beginning of that song, and admittedly, dude, I totally left you out of the thanks for that, and I'm sorry for that, because like next time I see you, I'm gonna buy you a beer, or an adult beverage of some kind. But like
that's about all that you got in royalties anyway. Here's $6, Tim. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going into debt for that. My friend Phil Thibodeau helped me write the beginning of that too. I don't know if we talked about this when I was down in. So for those listening, I recorded Leveler. We recorded Leveler and Constellations, the album that precedes Leveler, in Orlando. Well, in Sanford. Yeah. And at that time, like you said, Tim, we were talking about Brick by Brick, and I was on this sort of, I don't know, I was really interested in what the church had to say, theologically speaking, philosophically speaking. And so I found a pastor down there. I think his name is John Piper or R.C. Sproul. I can't remember which one. I confused them.
You mentioned them, yeah.
And I found that he actually preached, his church was like very close to where I was recording. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to go to this church, and I don't really want to go alone. So I tweeted, I was like, hey, does anybody in the area want to go to church with me to go see this pastor speak? And I forget, like I said, if it was Sproul or Piper. I think it was Sproul. He speaks and writes in a way that's deep. He's like sort of Tim Keller ish, and it really grabbed me. So I got a response from this guy named Phil Thibodeau, who I'd never met before, and we went together. We met for the first time at this church, and he ended up being a drummer and a fan of the band, obviously following me on Twitter, and he came back to the studio and helped me work on the beginning of Internal Canon.
Oh, that's sick.
Apparently that part was difficult for me to write to. I'm not exactly sure why I needed a lot of help on it between you and Phil.
Yeah. No, that was fun. I just remember like you cranking the MIDI versions of these songs,
Yeah.
and there was no real context to what they were going to sound like. And so it was cool hearing it back for the first time, hearing some of the fills that we had worked on. I think, and then you added a bunch of like percussion elements to that song too. So like Leveler to me anyway was like a complete separation from what you had done in the past as August Burns Red.
Yeah.
And it was like a whole new breed of metal, which was
we started to get a little
cool.
weird on Leveler. That's when JB like brought in his ingenious creativity, and some people call it weird. There's definitely, I guess you could use that word. It's
the prog
that's
people
where you
don't
started
call it
to
weird.
see right. That's tame for them.
Yeah.
JB started to flex his muscles a little bit, be like, all right, so like we can do the Constellations thing, which is awesome. That's one of my favorite albums. But like Leveler, you're able to see some of that dynamic, some other dynamics. To your point, so
that's pretty cool. Yeah. So anyway,
man.
Hope you guys enjoyed that live stream. It's you guys are always a pleasure to see live. I'm always blown away.
Thanks, man. This is going to be
show.
the biggest show we've ever done, production wise. Like, I have to bring suntan lotion.
Yeah.
You know, there's fire, and I'm close to it, and it's 1,000 degrees at the base of it. So it's like on top of playing, I have to be cognizant of the heat level and like the shock of like, whoo, there's the sound of it, and also the sight of it, and also the heat of it. It's not going to throw me off, but it's just like I think it's going to amp me up more than anything.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. I'll get you a ticket.
Thank you. I'll buy one.
I owe you one. I didn't thank you.
Leveler royalties didn't pay for my ticket, man.
You trying to say Leveler just reminded me of
Leveler.
There's a TV episode. I forget what TV show, but someone's trying to say the word rural juror.
Rural juror.
It's two tough words, especially the first one that I don't even want to try to say again. Leveler.
Yeah, we don't need to pronounce things properly. It's not like we're talking into microphones, recording ourselves or anything.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's get into the drum topic, shall we?
Yes. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. If the tech stuff holds up and goes according to plan, we're going to cut away in a minute to me playing a song called Empire, which is off of Leveler at the 2011 Warped Tour, and then we're going to talk about that live setting. And then additionally, Tim, you have a drum video that is going to play.
Yeah, and then we'll analyze the two and talk about them. And I think the goal is so your video is live. My video is actually of me in my home studio. And we're going to talk a little bit about the contrast between live drumming and studio drumming.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard or haven't seen, we do feature these podcasts in video format on YouTube. This might be a good time to go check that out.
Yep.
If not, we can provide a link to at least the Empire video on YouTube for you to see. Yeah. But that's not really the point of this. The point is like to showcase just a blip of what we're talking about that is invoking a memory or an idea, and then we're going to talk about just that.
Yeah.
So let's show these videos, and I'm going to go pee.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with Empire. It might have been 2010 or so, I got a phone call from Truth Custom Drums, who I was playing for at the time. And I don't know if you remember this, Tim, but growing up, Truth had artists that I idolized, one of which was Aaron Gillespie.
Yep.
So I know you're a big Aaron Gillespie fan. So am I. And Under Oath was pivotal in my playing, and I just liked them as a band a lot. I saw them at Warped Tour like 2003 or 4. I was there with JB handing out my band's demo.
Wow.
But anyway, that's besides the point. Cool. Signature kit through Truth Drums. We were doing some promo for it. We had 100 kits to sell, 100. And Aaron Gillespie had done it, and they wanted me to try it. And I'm like, geez, Aaron Gillespie's a huge name in drumming. I don't know. So we put together, at that point, content creation was a little bit more difficult to do. And so like any chance you had to create content, you took it. And so we were on Warped Tour. And I think we might have been in the Pacific Northwest for this video. I'm not exactly sure. I was trying to figure out where it was. But it was uploaded October 13th, 2011 by Truth. And as you could hear, we're playing the song Empire. And you can hear the crowd. And if you watched it, you could just see the energy. I mean, as I'm watching it, I can see how hard I was hitting. I wasn't thinking about hitting hard. It's just, how could you not?
Yeah.
And so one thing I want to point out about this video is that you are not hearing actual drum audio, like real live drum audio. That audio is from the studio. And all Truth did is just put the song Empire on top of me playing it, on top of us playing it, and it syncs up because we're all playing what's on the record.
Right.
So I just want to get that out of the way. It's not that it's really, really good audio. It's just that it's actually the album audio on top of what we're playing, because it would sound pretty bad otherwise.
Yeah.
So
but you're playing to a click. You're playing the exact same thing. So it's
playing to a click.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Spare
one of the
yourself
benefits.
the sound.
Exactly. Make
Yeah.
it sound good.
Exactly.
And most people don't, it's not a big deal. So what we're going to talk about here is studio setting versus live setting. I'm going to talk about the live setting, and Tim is going to talk about the studio setting. We'll kind of migrate into both as well throughout it. So here's the point that I would like to get across here. When I do a playthrough of Empire, when I did a playthrough of Empire for zillion years ago, shortly after this was recorded, I had to actually think about playing in such a way that felt entertaining. And whether I did that or not, I'm not exactly sure. But if I was going to make it look like I was playing the drums with any amount of enthusiasm and power, it was something I had to sort of manufacture. When you're playing in a live setting, especially like you could see in this video, there's probably 1,000, 2,000, maybe a few more in the crowd that are watching, singing, moshing, jumping up and down, whatever. And the energy is there. It's created for you. And so you're reacting to that. And if you're listening to this and maybe you haven't played on a stage and maybe you haven't played for an audience, something that as a musician you might not know is we feed off of that in a huge way, right?
So much, yeah.
So do you know at Warped Tour how there's the crowd behind? If you're backstage, you can come on to the stage, which as it turns out is a trailer.
Yep.
It's a truck trailer. And they let a certain amount of people on. If you're trying to watch Paramore, it might be a closed stage. If you're trying to watch A Day to Remember, it's going to be packed and they're going to cut it off at some point. So we typically had a decently, it was full, but it wasn't like to the point where it was cut off. And so there are people right behind me as I'm playing. Yeah. And, I'm looking behind me. There's people to my right. Looking to my left, there's people there. Look directly behind me, my buddy Bobby's back there. He would sit on the subwoofer and just hang out. And so there's this feeling of, I don't know, that really gives you energy. It gives you a little bit of nerves maybe, because to your point earlier, you're naked.
Yeah.
People can see an angle of you playing.
It is a weird feeling, man.
It's a weird feeling. Yeah. I like it, but it is a different type of show. So bottom line, live setting, what's happening is largely dictated by the setting in which you are performing. It's largely dictated by the setting in which you're performing. A show like Warped Tour, you're outside, which is different in and of itself.
Yep.
Sometimes the sun's shining in and it's reflecting off your cymbals and right into your eyes. Other days it's 100 degrees in Las Vegas and you're just struggling to just make it through. Other days there's like an imminent storm in the background that you're looking at. Like you just constantly have this scenescape in front of you.
Right.
It's wild. It's so wild. So a Warped Tour show is much different than like a show at the TLA in Philly. At the TLA, it's much darker. It's obviously indoors. It's a pretty tight crowd. There's no one behind you. And my show is largely dictated by who's there, where they are, what the room's like, what the setting's like. And so mentally, where do you go with that? Like, are you focusing on the fact that you're in LA and your record label's there and you're just trying to play well for them because they're there to see you? Yeah. Or are you playing for the 1,000 kids that paid to get a ticket to see you play? It's like, well, like logic would tell you, you play for the crowd, for your paying audience, right? But mentally, I am thinking of the label.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who I feel like there's more to lose in my relationship with them than with the fans. So I was just talking about this with a pastor yesterday morning. He's a friend of mine, and obviously him being a pastor, he's preaching on stages often, and he preaches at a big church. It's called LCBC. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's
my
big
grandparents
in this
went
area.
there for a long time. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So he's at the Mannheim campus, which was the first one, and I've known him for 15 years, and we were just catching up. It had been a while. And I was asking him about this. I was asking him, when you're preaching, do you think about the staff and the other pastors and the tech team that have seen you preach two performances, two sermons before, one sermon before, like they know what you're going to say before you say it? Or are you thinking about the congregation and the message that you're trying to articulate? And he's like, oh no, I'm never thinking about the staff or the other pastors. I said, really? He said, no, I don't think I've ever thought about that, about the fact that they know what I'm going to say. He's like, I'm thinking about the congregation. Like, I'm going to stand there and think these people have not heard this message before and they're about to hear it. And that really took me back and to our God topic, kind of convicted me a little bit because I don't do that. If we're playing like a back-to-back show at a same venue or a marquee show and then like a night show, I'm thinking about the fans that are going to see us twice, or I'm thinking about someone who's working for us and they've seen us play this before. I'm not thinking about the audience who's seen us for the first time.
Sure.
It's so weird. And I think some of it is like they know what I'm going to do before I do it.
Yeah.
And so like I have to live up to the expectation of what they know is coming. Whereas like with the audience, they don't really have an expectation. So it's going to be easy to supersede whatever they think.
Yeah.
It just really struck me like, Jason, like you don't think about the people that hear you preach the message. No, I think about the congregation. I'm like, man, I need to work on that.
Yeah.
I got to work on that.
That's crazy. So I have a little story, and this is like, I'm just thinking, so I was never part of a real signed artist, so I never had like that pressure. Yeah. Like this person makes the decision whether they want to keep me, like re-sign me for a couple more albums or not. I never had that pressure, but I played so many label showcases, and it was this like the same thing, just like playing in front of people. Like, am I playing my heart out for the people here that I want to convert into new fans of the band, or people that I've seen at all the shows this year and they keep coming to see my band play? Or am I playing for these label execs that I know are watching and I need, and I remember one specific time, I don't know if you're a Black Sabbath fan, but Carmine Appice came to one of our shows. He came to Webster Hall when we played there. And I just remember, like, he came in our green room before the show, and my probably wouldn't have recognized them because I'm not a huge Black Sabbath fan or anything, but I knew them, obviously.
Yeah.
Legendary drumming from, not necessarily from a technical standpoint, but definitely from like I remember this part. I want to learn how to play this drum part, and this is Carmine here. So my singer introduces me to him, and he's like, yeah, he came to, to see us play tonight. And man, like the nerves just went up from there. It's like Carmine Apiece, like literally has like drum instruction videos in Guitar Center.
I have one of them. Yeah, I have one.
And he comes to see us play. And I just remember like getting up on stage, and I was like, I just have to put on a good show. Like I just have to have fun up here. Wipe it all away and just play. Like I know these parts. I've been practicing them. I know this set list. Let's just get through the show and have as much fun as possible. And I just remember like after doing that, after clearing my head, and it was actually a label exec or a label showcase show as well. So he was there, and then there was label executives. And I just remember he came in the green room after the show and he's like, dude, you go crazier than any other drummer I've ever seen live. Like you're the guy flailing up there. Like, man, I was like, there was so much relief because like I could have like tightened up, tried to play the parts perfectly and sounded good, but what he noticed was that I was going nuts.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and I'll never forget that. Like that's for me, just a great example of. Like, just have fun up there. Like, it doesn't matter.
That's exactly
like, put on a good show, and putting on a good show ultimately is like, this is for the fans. This is for the people watching. I'm putting on a good show, and I'm not worrying about the rest.
It speaks to the fact that in our heads, we build this narrative, and the narrative is rarely true. Like, the narrative that I build when I'm on a stage like Warped is everybody behind me is a drummer, and they know exactly what I'm playing in this technical song, and they're going to know if I mess up. That is completely untrue. Like, there might be a couple drummers up there, and there might be one or two of those couple drummers who actually know the song that just came out, by the way. It had just come out. It's very unlikely that many of those people knew exactly what I was doing, and if they did, they were critical of the fact that I was going to mess up or not. They were just there to enjoy the day, right? But in my head, we build these narratives that other people are viewing us a certain way, or other people are expecting things in a certain way, and it guides us. It cuts us short. It introduces fear, and it depletes our joy. It really does. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. Like, if you're listening to this and you have something coming up where you're thinking more about who's going to be there, who's going to witness it, who's going to be entertained, who's paying to see you, who's grading your paper, than you are like the message itself or like the intended audience, then you're missing it. And I'm saying this from personal experience. Like, those kids in that crowd, they were there to have a good time. And, do I remember the show because of their response to it? I probably remember it because of one or two people who walked on and said, can't wait to see you play. Love your drumming. Like, those are the people that I have in my head. Yeah. Because I feel like they're expecting a certain something from me for this performance instead of everyone else in the crowd who paid a ticket to be there. This guy over here, right? He probably got free tickets, and he probably hasn't even ever seen me play drums. He's just saying something because he's on stage, and it's like trying to break the ice, right? But we build it's funny because it's true. Like we build that narrative, and it's just interesting talking about this with you. Like, wow, that's really true. Yeah, like, your idea
it is so true.
Of what he says to you is like in the back of your head as you're playing, and you were able to just like work through that and go, you know what, I'm going nuts. And as someone who goes to a show, and I could see someone who's playing drums looking at me, and I know what they're thinking. Like, they're trying to impress me, the best thing I can see is like you're enjoying yourself. And you're playing drums because you love it.
And as a musician, you pick it up even more. You can tell when someone's just trying to play the parts and not have fun.
Yep.
And in most cases, I think, and I'm biased obviously because I've been a musician for so long, and when I go to shows, I pick up on these things. But I believe that the crowd, the people at a show, can pick up on whether you're having fun or not.
Oh yeah,
I think it's pretty. There's definitely, and it's in the same way that you feed off of their energy, I think they feed off of yours. So it's like so important to have that energy as a performer. You know, it's got to be about putting on a show. It's got to be about, you know, and I agree. It's hard when there's a sea of faces in front of you, especially as a drummer, I think, because you're not just, you know, like as a singer, it's a different experience, at least in my experience. You know, being a singer up front, at least I had a guitar to kind of be my crutch. But like, you know, you're connecting with these people, you're making eye contact. As a drummer, you have your band in front of you in most cases, and you have your kit in front of you.
Your kit.
And there's so much, it's just like you got, you know, your drum set's your crutch, your bass player's your crutch, and it makes it so much easier. I hate to say it, but really, it actually is. It's so much easier being on stage as a drummer. But you know, you have to somehow distinguish. Like the reason why you obviously will be more prone to impress someone who comes up before the show and says, "Hey, I can't wait to see you play," is because there's a face, there's a person. They're an individual that you've interacted with, whereas the crowd is just a sea of faces. You don't know any of them.
True.
And that's why I think it's important that you go to the barrier after the shows and meet some of these people because, you know, there's every single one of them is experiencing your show in a different way.
True.
From, you know, maybe 6 inches, a foot over, you know, but they're seeing you from a different angle, a different perspective. They're hearing, you know, I know if I'm you know, right in front of the stage as opposed to way back to the right of the stage, it's going to sound different even. You know, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to have a different experience. So there's all these people that are having a different experience of your show, and I just, it's important. But yeah, mentally, I don't really have any advice as far as, you know, like playing for those people or being able to single them out. As a singer, it was much more easier because I would make eye contact a lot more frequently. When I was singing, I was making eye contact and I was basically singing to that individual at that moment. And so I was connecting with, you know, 25 people out of the couple hundred that were there. My band wasn't that big. The 200 people at the VFW.
That's a lot of people in a VFW.
That's a lot. Yeah, Creation Festival. Man, that was a completely different.
There you go.
Different story.
Outdoor.
That was real tough.
Lots of people.
Yeah, people behind the stage. We literally had the bands. Like we had the bands that I grew up listening to, just sitting back there, hanging out, watching.
That's awesome.
I was like, yeah, this is not.
Yeah, that's intimidating.
This is unnerving.
That's like Revelation Generation. Where
it's the same thing there.
Hung out with you and
that's right.
It was a big Christian
stage for your show.
fest in New Jersey. That festival was awesome. We loved playing Revelation Generation.
That's a great festival. And their green room was just fantastic.
Oh, it was like
they treated the bands.
House.
Yeah, they treated the bands so well.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
I remember the hospitality was great, and unfortunately, Christian festivals were not known for that. So it was
not really.
I mean, not all of them, but some of them were just not great in that department. But to your point that you just made about you're not sure what advice, I have a piece of advice that I'm going to try implementing that my friend told me yesterday morning, the pastor.
Okay, let's hear it.
He said this. He said, not every interaction is an audition. Don't audition. Stop auditioning. You don't have to. And I realized that, you know, there's this term of like people pleasing. Like if your personality is to be a people pleaser, then you're looking to. I 100%
am.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has a slice of that.
As a performer, you have to be to an extent, right?
Right.
I think.
But I think so too. I think we can implement that into drumming. I think we can. I think we can implement that idea into performing. But the pretense to it is that you have to practice and be competent at your instrument. Because if you haven't gotten to the point as a drummer where your band can see you as a foundation strong enough to stand on, then you're not going to be successful. Mm-hmm. But if you are, and if you've built that, and if your band can depend on you to be a foundation, then you don't have anything else to prove. You just go up there and you play hard.
That's right.
And you enjoy it. And to your point earlier, like everybody can see that. They can see that. They can see the chemistry between you and your band. So that would be my encouragement. Don't feel like you have to audition. Don't feel like you have to win over every person that's there. You've established yourself as a drummer in a band, and you've put in the work, and you don't have anything more to prove. You just go out there and do what you do, and there will be people who are critical of you. And maybe you take some of that criticism and you say, I can get better. Yeah. Or maybe you bounce it off and say, that's actually not true. And I appreciate the criticism, but I'm going to move on here.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do that depending on what kind of crowds you're playing for. So that's the live setting piece of this. I really enjoyed that. I think that was
great.
It's just a good walk down memory lane. And now let's transition to studio setting.
Yeah. So I'm going to play a video real quick, or for you listening, play a song clip. And then I'll talk about it after.
Go pee.
All right. Go pee.
I'm freaking out. I'm waiting for the daylight. My thoughts are riddled with doubts. I'm holding on for dear life. Confused and counting down the minutes left till daylight. If I could just hang up the phone and stop listening to your dial tone. Someone tell me where I am. I don't know the back of my hand. I close my eyes for just a minute.
So that song, a little bit of context. I'm the type of person who I write a lot of things all the time. My voice memos app on my iPhone is filled with me humming melodies from any time from 3 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the bathroom, in the break room, wherever. And in most cases, I rarely ever finish these songs. There's verses, there's chorus melodies, there's lyrics written in my notes. There's whatever. Tons of ideas all over the place. It's always been that way. I've always done this. So. In 2018, there was, I guess, a period in my life that was really difficult, and music is often the thing that I turn to. It really should be faith, but to be completely honest, it's music. So that's instinctively, I just, veer towards music. I pick up a guitar and I start writing some music. And so, I just decided, like, I'm going to write this song, and I'm going to actually finish it, and I'm going to record it, and I'm going to release it. Like, that was my goal. So the song that you just heard was a song that I wrote in 2018, just came up on the 3-year anniversary of its release. And it just brought back memories of writing the song. It came together so quickly. It was a really good example of what I was feeling at the time. Yeah. I don't know if the lyrics necessarily were like true to what I was feeling, but the vibe of it and just what it was what I was feeling. But like, yeah, I wrote the guitar parts and I sat down. This was actually the first full song I recorded after building my home studio in 2017. So it was the first time I sat down and actually like officially wrote drum parts for my own song, recorded them the way I wanted to, tuned them up, mixed them, recorded all the guitar parts, recorded all the vocals, mixed and mastered the whole song, did all the production and everything, and got this all out within a month. And it's something that I'm still to this day really proud of. Not necessarily like the quality. Like I'll listen back and I'm like, I could have done this a little better. I should probably remix this. But like at the time, it felt so good just to release something and be like, I did all of this by myself in a month. And as Matt was talking about like his live experience, obviously it brought back memories, but the contrast of live to studio is just insane. And even just like, I'm actually going to make this even bigger than studio. I'm going to say like writing, because we talked a little bit about writing Leveler, and just there's a different expectation and a different vibe when you're in that creative process, that, you know, writing an album into recording an album. Practicing for recording an album is different, for me at least, than practicing for a live show. You know, when I'm practicing for an album, I'm practicing by myself. You know, I'm practicing to click tracks, or I'm practicing to MIDI files or scratch guitars. You know, like I'm trying to think of everything I've ever practiced to leading up to it. And it's just totally different. Like in this case, for this song, I actually had no reference. I just had a click track because I knew I wanted to start with drums. So I had written the song in my head. I had the lyric sheet to my right just for reference on, you know, how many measures I needed to play.
Yeah, structure. And
then I played the drum part. And so what you watched or listened to was actually the actual takes of me playing in my studio. I think it took 2 takes in total to get that final version. But so it's just weird thinking about me now. Like my life consists of pretty much studio drumming. I rarely ever play live. So now like this room is kind of my solace. I'm comfortable here. I have my mic set up. I know how to record it. I know how to mix it. I even have a templated mix that I throw on right to begin with before I start tweaking stuff. Like it's so dialed in at this point, and it's such a place of comfort, and that's so different than it is in a live setting. But at the same time, there's a different form of pressure. So like in live, you go to a venue, and who knows how it's going to be set up? Who knows how it's going to sound? Who knows what speaker system they have live? You know, it's probably going to sound different. It's probably going to feel different, even if your kit is set up the exact same way. All we can do is try to make it as consistent as possible through click tracks and in-ear monitors, and you know, a tech that can set up your kit the way that you like it. You know, but in the studio, you actually have the time to kind of get all of that dialed in, get comfortable. But once you sit down and press record, there's a brand new pressure. There's no audience. There's no sea of faces in front of you. But there is a Pro Tools screen with a grid that can tell you every single beat that you miss. That, in my case, let me know every single note that I hit wrong when I was singing, or every single guitar part that I screwed up. You know, it's a different form of pressure, and we've talked about red light syndrome a little bit before, so I don't want to go too far into that. But there is that sense of when you press record, the likelihood of it sounding as good as it did before you pressed record is slim, just because there's a little bit of pressure. In fact, a lot of pressure. I'm fortunate enough, like with that song, I was fortunate to have no additional layers. Like there was nobody else that I was trying to impress in the studio with me. I'm in my little 9x9 room, just being creative and just recording, and I know how I want it to sound, and ultimately I'll be the one mixing and mastering it. And so there's really no pressure, but there's still pressure, because when I press record, I'm still messing up. Why is that? Right? So I want to talk about that a little bit. I guess that's my preface. I'll kind of hand it over to you for a second.
No, that's as you're talking, it's just bringing up, 15 years of memories. I mean, still when I look at Pro Tools, I have, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit like when someone else looks at a picture of like a family picture from a long time ago. It sounds kind of nuts, but like I look at Pro Tools, I'm looking at it right now, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot over the last 15 years. The appearance, I mean, there's like dark mode now and some other
color
features.
coded and stuff.
Yeah. But it takes me back to 2005 recording with Adam D, Thrill Seeker.
Right.
And I just have so much of my life is is based on like me taking something I've created in my practice space, and it's no one else is aware of what I wrote, of what I put time into until it hits Pro Tools.
Right.
And then it becomes real. It becomes real. And it's very satisfying to see the grid moving and to see your audio coming through in a tangible way. It's no longer just in your head, right? We've talked about like, J.R. Tolkien and Leaf by Niggle, the short story he wrote when he was like overwhelmed with this idea of like, how am I going to write Lord of the Rings and get it out there before I die?
Yeah.
Like it exists in my head and nowhere else. I have that thought a lot with drumming. It's like I wrote this part and I'm not terrified, but I'm concerned. Like I'm worried that I'm going to forget it, even if it's on my iPhone.
Right.
Like in a video format until it's recorded. And then it's like,
yeah, relief.
yeah. Yeah. So studio setting versus live setting, practice setting versus live setting.
Mm-hmm.
I went into the studio to re-record Leveler, and there's a bunch of stick shavings on the carpet. And the first thing I did was ask Carson, where's the vacuum? I want to vacuum this up. I didn't have to. I could have just put my kit down on it and played, and I would have contributed to the stick shaving.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I needed to know mentally that things were in order before I started playing. Because if things are a mess and I put my kit in that mess and everything is just sort of random and I don't have any control over the setting, I'm not going to play as well. Because it doesn't feel like the stakes are as high. It doesn't matter as much. But if I invest into the way my kit's set up and how it's tuned and how it looks, I mean, how the carpet even looks before I set it up, then I'm going to play better.
Yeah.
And so I think as drummers, if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, like, how can I bring this home for myself? Like, I can't really relate to either. I would encourage you to try this. I talked about this last night in Drummer Hangout. Take your kit and put it in a corner, even if it's an electronic kit or just practice pad. Vacuum the area, clean the area, organize the area, and then bring back in your kit one piece at a time and rebuild it. I would argue that you're going to be more inspired to play.
Yeah.
You're probably going to change your heads. You're probably going to change out your cymbals or clean them at least. It's going to matter more. It's not just going to be this space where you go and play for a couple minutes and then leave.
Right.
And it's the same way in the studio, right?
That's right.
So I think that translates to your practice time, and it's just very interesting. I like the point you made earlier about how when you're in the studio, like the way that you play and the way that you practice is so different than live, and that is so true. Like I can make it through an ABR show practicing without even hardly breaking a sweat sometimes. And then I get out there and I play live and I'm soaked. What's the difference? Well, adrenaline, the heat of the room, those two factors, but I'm hitting with a much greater intensity.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I am in it. Like you're in your element.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. And this relates to, studio and practice, I guess. And you actually have two examples to pull from. During COVID, obviously, you built up mattgrinerlessons.com. You have your subscription service now. You've been doing playthroughs. And I'm curious to know just like the difference that you were in as far as your headspace. So you have a studio set up in your basement now. Mm-hmm. You record videos. You hit record all the time now. Mm-hmm. And you've had a few different experiences here. One is you hired a videographer to come in and video you playing, and those videos are going to be used by your label. But then you also have the capability now where you actually record videos yourself. You record all the drums yourself, and you use those for your own personal membership program. Is there any difference there as far as like when you sat down on the kit with that knowledge, like I have a videographer here and this is going to be played for the label, as opposed to I'm sitting down at the kit, these are my cameras, this is going up on mattgrinerlessons.com.
Oh, yeah.
How does that change?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I play better when there's someone else in the room. When the stakes are higher, I perform at a higher level.
Yeah.
So when it's just me, it usually takes more takes. Even though you'd think I'd be able to be more comfortable and there's less pressure and I can relax more, knowing mentally that there's a person here who's recording on 4 different cameras and he is present, actively shooting, I'm going to lay in a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even though I'm recording the playthroughs now myself, like I send them to Clint and Clint edits them, I still have to turn on just as many cameras. Mm-hmm. I know the stakes are high. I just do better with someone else in the room.
Right.
And to contrast that with live, if there are cameras on me live, as you could see in that Empire video, like I'm laying in pretty hard.
Yeah.
And it's natural. In your studio and your practice space, like I said earlier, you kind of have to manufacture that energy. Like you have to, all right, let's go. Come on. Let's go. And you push record and you just hammer in. And usually it takes like me sweating to feel like I'm in it. If I'm cold or if I'm not sweating at all, it feels weird. I don't like it. I have to like be worked up a little bit and like sweating and heart's racing. And now I feel like I'm going to give a good take.
Yeah. So I guess before we wrap up this topic, what advice would you give somebody as someone who has now recorded how many studio albums? 8?
Something like that.
I forget.
It might be 9.
Might be 9.
Might be 9 with Leveler.
A number of studio albums that you've recorded now and have toured the world.
Yeah.
How do you go into a studio knowing that you have to perform in a way that is not exactly how it'll sound live, but similar as far as the energy that's brought forth? How do you get into the right headspace, and how do you prepare yourself going into the studio to put on a performance like that?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when we record, I actually wanted to talk about this earlier. When we record, we don't think about how we'll do it live. Like if the part's really hard and we're struggling, if it sounds good and it's musical and it's a good song, we leave it.
Yeah.
There are a few instances I could think of where it was like, oh, this is too fast and we're never going to be able to play this live. Like maybe we slowed it down, but typically it's like, we'll figure that out later. Let's just make the song.
Yeah.
Like, let's make this sound the way we want it to.
Yeah. So mentally, how do you get the energy there, though? How do you get yourself to get to the point where you're laying into that snare and bringing what you bring to a live show?
Okay. For me, it's a lot more about how rehearsed I am in the song. Like if I've developed a muscle memory for the parts, I can just rip in. Yeah. But if I'm like second guessing myself, I'm not going to hit as hard. I'm not as confident, and I'm going to get frustrated.
Right.
I'm going to get up and be like, oh, dude, I cannot figure this part out. And then you have like your producer, your engineer, and some of your band in the control room watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. Like you feel like you let yourself down and other people down because you're not ready to do this thing.
Right.
But if you're rehearsed, you can rip. So my advice would be spend as much time as you can before the studio, with the parts. Alex from Era was on Drummer Hangout last night, and he's like, dude, I don't play drums before the studio.
That guy's so good, man.
He's like, I just sit with the songs. He's like,
wow.
I listen and listen and listen and listen and listen, and then when I get there, I play for the first time. I'm like, are you serious?
That's crazy.
Like that would be so nerve-wracking to me to like not have played the drums before you go in and record. But
yeah,
it obviously works for him. So my advice would be, at the very least, you just got to know the songs, and you have to know what parts you're going to play.
That's really good advice. I don't think I have better advice to give. Knowing the songs is exactly what I would say. Just if you're comfortable, you'll play well. Exactly.
And you'll hit hard. Like you're real confident about it. Like you can really lay in. I mean, the feeling. Like if you tell me, hey, play this beat in 5/8, and do this thing with your right hand and this thing with your left hand, I'm gonna be like, what? Like already you lost me. And I'm gonna be like, I'm not gonna hit that hard because I'm just trying to sort it out.
Yeah. But imagine take someone like Hal, who we had on the show recently.
Yeah.
He goes in the studio in these situations.
True. He's
never heard the song before, and he's expected to play it in about 5 minutes.
I mean, that's a special skill set.
Studio musicians have so much I mean, they have to have
That's a
so
good
much.
point. They can't, like, in that case, they're reading a chart in most cases. Like, they're reading a chart
they are
because
sight reading. Yep.
they don't have time to, familiarize themselves with the material.
Yeah.
So it's just like, excuse me. So they're just at a level where they can read and they can play just as fast as they can read. They can read just as fast as they can play.
Yeah.
And so, because there's not time to
right.
familiarize yourself with the material.
Yeah. Some of these guys, though, come in and they're completely reliant on like the Nashville number system. They just see measures and beats, and they know I have to play here in this time, and I have to stop playing here in this time.
I'm not
and,
I'm not familiar with that. What is the Nashville number system?
So it's a lot of it's mostly for guitars.
Okay.
Because say you want a key change, you're like, this key's not working for us. Let's change halfway through recording. They are relying on the number system to basically just shift. So instead of a bunch of chords or tabs, it's numbers that basically just mean certain chord progressions. And it's the same thing for drummers. They're reliant on numbers for measures, for stops, for, so it's a lot of brackets and numbers and, sometimes there's a lyric sheet attached. Sometimes it's just a sheet of paper with brackets and numbers. It was insane. It was such an eye-opening experience because these guys came in. My whole band couldn't get there, so they brought in some studio musicians and they came in and they wrote stuff and they, on the spot, we were just like, this is, the producer wrote out the music, the numbers, and so he had it all arranged. The arrangement was on the paper, and then these guys just took it and they're like, all right, well, this is the solo I have to play over this rhythm part because this is the chord progression, and it's just wild.
Yeah,
the level of
that
artistry
makes you think of like
and,
Ghost Note and Snarky Puppy.
Oh yeah, those guys are
those dudes were the same way.
Prime example.
They hear it and they can play it and remember it.
It's crazy.
Okay, well that was a good topic. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun talking about that and sort of reliving the past. And I hope that was helpful to you as a listener. We're going to transition into our God topic or faith topic, and we'll just do like a quick 10-minute here. Segment on convictions.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I thought of this topic this last week, and what I want to talk about is this. We base the decisions that we make in life on what we really believe deep down. So we can say we believe one thing, but our actions speak louder than our words. Mm-hmm. What are your convictions? And are you sure that they are your convictions? Is it true that you can determine what your convictions are by looking at how you live your life every single day? What are you doing with your life? What are you not doing? Who are you interacting with? Who are you not interacting with? What are you doing in your private time? What is your prayer time like? What is your community like? What is your job like? What are you doing with your money? What are you not doing with your money? Right? Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say that if you were, Tim, if you were to look at my life, if I were to give you complete transparency into every aspect of my life, do you think that if you looked at the actions alone, you could determine what my convictions are? Or are my convictions one thing and what I do another? Here's what I'm getting at. It's biblical that we set out to do something and we fail at it. We want to do this, but instead we do that. Why? The thing we set out to do, are those our convictions? Or are our convictions the thing that we actually do? Because if we're convicted about doing things a certain way and we don't do it, then why is there that margin?
Right.
And I would propose that sin, our fallen nature, is what separates our conviction, what we know we ought to do deep down, from the thing in which we do. The reason I'm bringing this up is I think it's important that we determine what our convictions are, so that we know what is right and what is wrong. And so that we don't become filled with despair at the fact that we keep falling short of those things. Just because we're falling short doesn't mean that those convictions aren't true and real and meaningful and that they matter.
Right.
And that we shouldn't aspire to in the pursuit of those convictions.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, I want to say, I believe that those convictions are put there by the designer, the ultimate designer, the one who created life itself. And I believe that everyone has deep down a level of conviction in every area of their life, whether they choose to see it that way or not. Even if it's someone who's listening to this podcast saying, well, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in religion, I don't believe in anything. There's still a method in which you follow and use to live your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so C.S. Lewis talks about this a lot. And this is one of the first things that drew me towards C.S. Lewis in the book Mere Christianity. If you haven't read it, go read it. He talks about a train. And on a train, there's someone sitting there in a seat. And they get up, and someone else takes their seat. And the person comes back from the bathroom or from wherever they were, and they say, hey, you took my seat. And the person sitting there goes, okay, what's it to you? And the person said, well, that's not right. That was my seat. And the person sitting there goes, right? What's right? What's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And the C.S. Lewis argument that he then proposes is, we all have a standard of right and wrong, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not.
Right.
And what C.S. Lewis then extrapolates is that is pointing us towards proof that a God exists, because that is not an evolutionary method. It's not something that would be passed down, this idea of right and wrong. And he speaks to this moral code, this absolute morality. And I believe that those things, those convictions that we have, and this moral code and what's right and what's wrong, whether we choose to acknowledge a God or not, points us to something deeper that really matters. And I think that we need to be introspective about this. I think we need to ask ourselves how we're living our lives really. Like, what are we doing with our lives? And then take a second look at our convictions and say, what is the margin between our convictions, what we know we ought to do, and what we're actually doing?
Yeah.
And I think if you were to look at someone who has integrity, I would point towards someone like my dad. You see someone who, when you haven't talked to them in a week or a month, you can take a pretty good guess as to what they're doing with their life. Let's say my mom says, your dad is at an auction today. I know my dad is minding his own business, probably buying someone a hot dog and a coffee, and probably going to come home with like a tool that he's going to use on the farm, and he probably got it at a good price. He's going to fix it up, right? I know that about him because I know my dad, and I know he's not going to do other things, even though I'm not there to see it.
Yeah.
And I aspire to be the kind of person that, Tim, if someone asks you, like, you know, what do you think Matt's doing right now? You could take a pretty good stab at like, oh yeah, well, he's doing this. If he's in that situation, then he's doing this. Mm-hmm. If he's in that situation, he's not doing that.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
And so that is indicative of someone's convictions being a certain way and what they're doing being hopefully somewhat parallel to those convictions.
Yeah. Yeah. So I without detracting from what you said, because what you said is incredible, and I want to dig deep into that. I've always found it interesting, the word conviction, because of how it's used in pretty much every other context other than Christianity, which is, you know, law, right? Uh-huh. When you're convicted, what comes next? A sentence. Once you're convicted of something, it means that you've done this. This is what you've done. This is an outline of what it is wrong that you've this act that you've committed, and now we have to decide what to do about it, how we're going to punish you. And I feel like I've always had conversations about conviction on the Christian sense, the spiritual sense.
Yeah.
And it's always led a slippery slope to legalism, to exactly what you said. Like, where do you draw the line between, holding yourself to your convictions and just knowing that you're going to fail? And, so I want to draw another parallel or another viewpoint, and this is like very common. If you've ever been to church, you probably heard this, but like, where's the line between where we are as Christians, as sinful people, or as redeemed people, and then where's God? Obviously, there's a large stretch of space between the line where we are and where God is.
Right.
And then, picture someone like Hitler. Where does Hitler fall on this? He's a lot more close. He's closer to us than he is to God. So it's like it's trying to figure out, like, so regardless of we're convicted of all these things, the sentence is death, right? And Jesus ultimately paid the price for that, so we are redeemed. But I really like what you're saying. And so I don't want to go too deep into where I was going to go with it.
Yeah.
But rather understand that a conviction is a sentence.
Yeah, I didn't even think
if
about
you're convicted
it
of
being,
something. Yeah, you're sentenced.
I didn't think of
right?
it in terms of like you being convicted.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I have to define that. So like the Christianese would be like, I feel convicted about this, right? I feel convicted about this thing that I did and all you're really saying, right, is like, I know I ought to have done better.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I should have done and I didn't do it, and I feel convicted about the space between those two things.
Yeah.
What you're saying is not something I've thought of, which is like a criminal that's convicted of a crime.
Yeah, they're literally convicts is what you call them. Yeah.
So there's a sense of judgment. There's a ruling. There is a juror that is sat in, and they've said this happened. This person has to pay. There has to be, justice has to be served.
Yeah.
And so, in a Christian sense, the beautiful thing is that Jesus has done that for us. And so, when I'm convicted about something in my life, it's not me that has to stand in front of the jury, right, and say, I'm going to plead my defense, or here's my guilty plea. I'm guilty of it, and yet there's someone standing in for me on my behalf.
Yeah.
And so that's the gospel, right? It's like, I don't deserve that. I committed this crime. I should have to pay for it. I'm convicted of this crime.
Yeah.
And so in an everyday sort of way, it's like, Tim, you have convictions
Right.
about what's right and what's wrong. You go to the grocery store. Well, for example, you just took your son to daycare this morning?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you took him to daycare. And, I mean, someone cuts you off on the way there, and it upsets you, as it should or could. What's to prevent you from rolling down your window and screaming an absurdity at them? Like, they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So why would you not do that? Would you do that? Did you do that?
Have I never done that before?
Yeah, questionable.
Did I do it this morning? No. Yeah, no, because it's wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong. So I think that this is on its face. It's a basic concept, and my girlfriend and I were talking about this. The reason that I think it's something that we actually can talk about as a society right now, as a culture right now, there's a lot of things that seem off limits. I think we can talk about convictions because it's me. You can't take this away from me. This is something that I believe.
Your conviction.
This is my conviction. And if you go to a counselor, anyone that's been to a great counselor knows that a counselor will help you understand how to talk to the other person or party in a way that you're not saying you or they.
Yeah.
Or he or she. It's like, no, me, I. You talk about yourself. That's the only way in which you can conduct a conversation where someone else can't be defensive about it because you're talking about you. I feel a certain way, right?
This is, yep.
So like if I tell you, Tim, I feel convicted about this, you're probably going to listen and respect my stance on it, even if you completely disagree, even if
I don't hold the same convictions. That's
yeah,
right.
if you don't hold the same conviction, right? And so that's why I think that this is something that we should probably focus more attention on, because it'll help us determine where we're going from here.
I love that.
Let's say that someone feels convicted about, okay, let's say someone's dating, and they feel convicted about being physically intimate with the person they're with, right?
Yeah.
And the person they're with is listening to them talk about this. So the person's like, I feel convicted about X, Y, and Z. And their significant other is like, okay, I don't have that same perspective as you. I don't have that same conviction as you. Because the significant other loves, their boyfriend or girlfriend, out of respect and love, they're going to say, you have this conviction. I like you and I love you and I'm your partner. And so I therefore take on that conviction. That's important to me too, because it's important to you.
Right.
Right. And so there's this level of
feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's this team effort that then plays out, and we become more civil. We are able to live. Civilization. Like the word is based on the word civil.
Right.
I think convictions need to be a more important part of our conversations, because it will help us be less accusatory towards others. Tim, you did this.
Yeah.
And
right.
Instead of like, hey, I feel this certain way, I'm convicted about this. All of a sudden, you're friendly. You can be friendly and respectful.
Right. I think this is really huge, actually, just even for the development of the church. So for anyone that's listening that's not in the church and hasn't heard conviction used in this way, I'm going to reference Jiminy Cricket and basically just say conscience, because conscience is the closest thing I can think of to conviction. Everyone has a conscience. That's always been, like, if anyone says, prove that there's a God, I said, conscience.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with upbringing. It has, there's kids who grow up in abusive homes or grow up without a home, and they still have a conscience. They still have this ability, unless you're a psychopath. But there is this this spiritual thing that is within you. You know what's right and what's wrong. And I think being respectful of convictions on both sides is really important. Like, even if you don't feel even if you feel convicted by something, not convicting someone else for that thing. Like, because you're going to put yourself, convictions, I see it in this way. Like, I think they're important and I think they're good to have. I think they're structural, but I also think they can be very, they can become a prison. If you just have convictions about every little thing, you're going to be confined, and there's no freedom there. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So when I'm seeing someone with convictions left and right, their conscience is telling them this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, there's something a little off there. That's not the Spirit of the Lord. That's something else. You're listening to someone else. So I think it's important to determine what is a spiritual conviction and what is just brought on. Like, there's certain people that don't drink beer.
Yeah.
My family doesn't drink alcohol. For the most
mine
part.
too. My parents.
And that's something that they have reasons for, and that's okay. And I respect those convictions.
Exactly.
They know I drink, and they respect my convictions.
Yep.
As soon as it becomes me telling them that they're wrong for not drinking, or them telling me that I'm wrong for drinking, that's where we cross the line. That's where you're putting convictions. And I think this idea can be brought in the church a lot, because this is where lines are crossed, feelings are hurt, people leave churches, people, break up, is because, you can hold true to your own convictions. No one's telling you not to. I think it's great to identify what convictions are from God and which convictions are your own.
That's right.
Regardless, you have every right to have those convictions. Just don't put them on other people. If those other people aren't convicted by those same things, there's so many lines, there's so many things that we have to be like, okay, well, murder is wrong.
That's right.
There's no, if you're not convicted by it, you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
You know, like it's if you don't feel like that's wrong, then there's something wrong with you. But
Right.
but there are certain things that I feel, you know, I've stepped into a bunch of places that judged me simply for the clothes I was wearing. They convicted me because I was wearing a T-shirt that wasn't appropriate for church or, you know, whatever. It's like, and you have to figure out, like, where do you draw the line?
What really matters here? Does
What really
that really
matters here?
matter? I mean,
Right.
what level is that? There are certain things that are better than others. To your point, there are laws that are in place so that we have a civilization. There are
That's right.
absolute rights and absolute wrongs. And, you know, here at Holy Ghost Notes, we believe that the best way to live your life is to follow the guideline that God has set in motion. Him being the creator, he knows what's best. And he loves us so much that he's willing to let us get it wrong.
That's right.
Think about that, man. He wouldn't have to do that, but he loves us that much that he's willing to let us get it wrong so that we can figure it out and just know for ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we get it wrong, we have the chance to get back up, and there's not a jury sitting in saying you're convicted of this crime. Instead, there's someone standing in between us taking the hit saying, yeah, they did, but I'll take it. I'll take the sentence. And that'll bring us to our knees. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what we want here at Holy Ghost Notes, is like us to take a serious look at this claim that someone did that for us on the cross. Someone took all of the crime and took all of the sin on themselves, having lived a perfect life. And once we take a serious look at that, what do we determine it says about how we live our lives today?
Yeah. I think we should do that constantly. That should be a regular assessment. How am I living my life? There's one thing I want to leave us off with here, and it's just a fun fact that it was really eye-opening to me when I was thinking about it. So what do you know what the name of the tree was that Adam and Eve ate off of?
The tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yep. So before they ate that tree, they were considered innocent, unblemished. And when they ate from that tree, which was quite literally the knowledge of good and evil, as soon as they knew what was wrong, then they could do it and be held responsible for it. It's the same thing with children. If someone, like my 4-year-old son got accidentally hit in the face by my 3-month-old son. My 3-month-old has no idea what it means to hit someone in the face. Mm-hmm. And my 4-year-old was like, Nolan just hit me in the face. I was like, well, it's okay. He doesn't know anything. You know, he doesn't know any better.
He does
He's innocent.
not know any better.
I'm not going to place that conviction on him. I'm not going to he's not going to get in trouble because he didn't know any better. My 4-year-old, if my 4-year-old were to hit Nolan in the face, he would get disciplined because he knows better. He knows what it means to hit someone in the face. He knows that that's wrong. This is where like it all plays in for me. Like, you know, the easiest person to get into heaven is someone with a mind like a child. It's the innocence. It's the innocence factor. You know, like, and thank the Lord that Jesus died for us, because we were unable to get into heaven no matter what we did. As soon as we ate off that tree, as soon as we knew what was good and wrong, we were created with a sinful nature because we have a choice. Mm-hmm. We entered into that sinful nature when we ate from the tree because we knew it was wrong, and we continue to do it anyway. So we were damned as soon as we ate from that tree.
That's
it
right.
took Jesus dying to redeem us from that. But I think it's still important. Yeah, I think it's still really important for us to assess our convictions and ask ourselves or ask our friends, what do you think of me?
True. I've done that before. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you got to have a good friend if you're going to do
right?
that.
That's true.
If you're going to do that, ask a good friend, but it's something you should do.
Yeah.
Tim, that's a great point.
So that's a practical application for today.
I can't add anything to that. I think that's a really great way to end this episode and this conversation. And certainly it's an ongoing one. It's something we
sure.
need to continue having. So thank you
It'll
so
keep
much for
coming up.
listening to Holy Ghost News podcast. We appreciate all of you for supporting us. If you liked what you heard, or if you didn't like what you heard, either way, go to, if you're on Apple Podcasts, just give us a review there. It helps us get this podcast out to more people. And if you're interested in becoming someone who's supporting this so that we can, give some money away, help people in need, and also keep this podcast going. We don't take a significant cut from this personally. It's not something that's paying the bills, but we enjoy doing it. We think it matters, and we hope you do too. And we'd love to have you in the inner circle. We have a bunch of different tiers. We just added the accent tier, which is like $1 an episode, and it gets you into the community. So I think probably the strongest selling point is the community aspect. Strong sense of community, good group of people, and we'd love to have you be part of it.
That's right. Yeah. You hear us talking about the inner circle all the time. There's a bunch of exclusive content that's available, but yeah, like Matt said, it's the community, and like I was saying in the pre-roll from today's episode, just being able to go beyond this podcast, help other people. We just supported a young boy who needed a service dog, so we put a portion of our earnings from May towards helping him get a service dog. So things like that just mean so much more. It goes beyond this conversation, goes beyond this podcast, goes beyond this community, and we'd love for anyone who wants to be a part of it to join on.
That's right. Cool. We always end the same way on here.
That's right.
We say the word peace, so feel free to join us. Do a little countdown. Tim, this was a good conversation. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you too, man. Thanks for having this with me.
3, peace. 2, 1.
I jumped the gun.
Peace.
I didn't know you were going to count it down.
Peace.